Kar začeli, dovolite mi par besed v slovenščini najprej, potem pa bomo nadaljevali v angleščini. Torej, jaz sem Uršula Lipovec Čebron, vas toplo pozdravljam, zelo sem vesela, da smo danes tu. Kot smo izpostavili v vabilu, se bomo danes ukvarjali s temo smrti v Alpah in na Balkanu. Veliko vemo o smrti, oziroma precej se ve o smrtih v Sredozemlju, dosti manj pa na kopenskih mejah Evropske unije. Ukvarjali se bomo z različnimi vprašanji, kdo umira na evropskih kopenskih mejah in kako se dogajajo njihove smrti, kateri so glavni razlogi zanje, kakšni so posmrtni postopki in kaj se zgodi s trupli preminulih. Zakaj so te smrti še vedno tako nevidne in kakšni so načini, da bi jih bolj javno obeležili. So I will switch now to English.
Because of me, I'm sorry.
No, because also of other people here. As we know, European migration policies have made crossings the Alpine and Balkan borders increasingly difficult, dangerous, and sometimes fatal. In this roundtable, we will address the following questions. Who is dying at European land borders and how are their deaths taking place? What are the main reasons for these deaths? What are the post-mortem procedures and what happens to the bodies of the deceased? Why are these deaths still so invisible and what are the new ways to publicly commemorate them? So I'm really glad that today with me are my good friends and colleagues. First, I would like to introduce Cristina del Biaggio, Marjana Hameršak, and Samer Arkawi. Okay. Cristina del Biaggio is an assistant professor in geography at the University Grenoble-Alpes in France and is affiliated with the PACT Research Laboratory. Presently, her research focuses on migrants that try to cross the Alpine borders and on the fatal consequences on increased border controls in the Alpine region. She has written a number of articles on the topic and co-edited a special issue of the Journal of Alpine Research entitled Refugees and Mountains. Marjana Hameršak is the coordinator of the International Research Project ERIM, the European Irregularized Migration Regime at the periphery of the EU. She's also a research advisor at the Institute of Ethnology and Folklore in Zagreb, and an assistant professor at the University of Zagreb, and she recently has been researching and writing about European land border deaths, especially in Croatia, Slovenia, and Bosnia. And Samer Arkawi is an activist and refugee living in Slovenia. He's a master student at the Faculty of Social Sciences in Ljubljana, where he's preparing the master thesis on autonomy of migration. He's also the author of videos on migration, such as Without Home, Ljubo doma, and Pushbacks on the Balkan route. So first of all, I would like to ask you, Cristina, a very basic question. As we all know, border deaths are usually described as accidents by the police and the media. How would you comment on that?
So thanks for the question and thanks for inviting me. Uršula, finally we see us after so many months, and thanks for everybody for being here. It's a pleasure for me, although the topic is not such a pleasure, but pleasure to be here and in that occasion to meet as well Marjana in Zagreb. So I'm there for 10 days as a research visitors, and actually here Slovenia is a bit the place where my research and Marjana's research meet, since I'm as you know researching on deaths at the borders, in the Alpine borders, and Marjana more working on the deaths at the Balkan borders. And Slovenia is actually in the middle of this, so at the intersection of these two geographical areas. So it's particularly, I think, interesting for us to be here and sitting at the same table. So your question. So I think it's now obvious and not in question anymore for researchers, activists, and persons working in NGOs that deaths at the borders do not occur because it's fatality. They do not just occur like that. They do not occur because of for example, if you have a look at the mountains, because of the snow, because of the cold, because of the dangerous rivers, but it's really a consequence of the border regime. And I wanted to show you. Hoping that now it's working. It was working. Wait. Yeah, give them a second. So, yeah, no, it's fine. So this is these are some number statistics. Although behind every number there's of course a person, and we do not have to forget that behind these numbers there's one person. These are the statistics that me and a colleague of mine, a PhD student called Sarah Bachellery, started to try to have a look at how many migrants died trying to cross the Alps and the Alpine border. So taking the Alps as the entire region from Slovenia, Croatia-Slovenia. This is Croatian-Slovenian border. That's what we decided to be the eastern border to France. And what you can see here is that we found out that we had 143 cases from 1993. And 80% of them occurred starting from 2016. And 2016, it's not just a number and a date like that. It's the beginning of the systematic border control and border checks in the for the Alpine state. So France started to control constantly at the border, Switzerland as well, and here in the eastern part of the Alps the same. So you can really see, and answering your question, that it's not a fatality. It's a consequence of the border regime. And I just wanted to say that this is one example if you take the Alps, but if you take all the regions, it's exactly the same. If you take the Mediterranean Sea, the first deaths that you can find at the Mediterranean shores, you found the first bodies in the 80s, at the end of the 80s. The 80s correspond to the period where the European states made the migration regime much more harder, and it's where you found the first dead bodies in at the shores. So it's obvious, it's like that, we know it really for long, and it's documented, and this is just one more example. Marjana would, if she would show you the statistic that she produced, it's the same as well. So we have this narrative that has to change, because the narrative today of the media, of politicians, is always that, who are responsible for migrant deaths. You have somehow the nature, so the dangerous paths that they take, and or the traffickers, smugglers. And this as well, it's actually, you need smugglers and traffickers, because legal paths are not allowed. If you would be allowed to go through legal paths, you would not go put yourself in such a dangerous situation.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think it's very important that you would talk also about your research. You were for years researching a case, that of Blessing Matthew, who died at Italian-French border. And maybe could you explain a bit about methodology used, and also my question is also, has anyone been held responsible for her death?
So yeah, this is kind of my last research that I've conducted, not alone at all. We were a team of persons. So one of these 143 person is Blessing Matthew. Blessing Matthew is, I'm going to show you her. So Blessing Matthew is this young woman, 21 years old, coming from Nigeria. And Blessing was trying to cross the Italian-French border in order to enter France, and she died in a river in May 2018. And what happened is that a local NGO called Tous Migrants, local in the, I don't know if you're kind of familiar of this area, is close to the, so Torino, you go north, and then you arrive in Val di Susa, and then if you want to enter France, you can go through Montgenèvre, and there's a wonderful international, transnational ski resort called Milky Way, where, you know, tourists can cross the border and not see the border, and some persons are just, you know, having a bit more trouble to cross the border. And she died because she was chased by the police. And she died in, as I said, in May 2018. The local, one of the local NGOs called Tous Migrants and the sister of Blessing living in Italy, they decided to seek for justice and to make a complaint, an official one. Now we have the word, Uroš, and to try to know what happened that morning at to Blessing. And actually, the French prosecutor decided that there was nothing to see, and it didn't open the case, so there were just preliminary inquiry and investigation that were done. So at that moment, Tous Migrants contacted me. I was a bit in contact with them, and we decided with another NGO called Board of Forensics, who are trying to seek justice and to document on border violence and try to find the proofs of what's going on during these events, and trying together to see what were the events that brought to the death of Blessing on that morning. And so we did a real work of investigation, of knowing, you know, what happened that morning, at which time, who was involved. And one of the elements that we brought was we found one of the testimony, the witness, called, his name is Hervé S. And Hervé S. was with Blessing until the end. And with him, we went to the place, to La Vachette, with this small hamlet where Blessing died. And he told us what he saw this morning. And with that, we gave to the prosecutor, you know, all the elements that we collected and tried to seek justice. But what I wanted to show you was, I'm going to show the beginning of just to show you the dynamic of what happened that morning. So it's we produced 1, 2, 3 videos. They are all online. If you go to the website of Board of Forensics, I'm going to show you really just the introduction of one video. This video is like 20 minutes. It's the testimony of, it's the reconstruction of the events following Hervé's testimony. And I'm going to show you just the beginning. It shows, you know, like the context where Blessing was found and the beginning of her journey until the police caught her.
On the 9th of May 2018, the body of a young black woman was discovered in the Durance River. It was blocked by the gates of the Prel Dam, downstream from Briançon in the French Haute-Alpes department. The investigation that was then initiated led to the identification of the young woman a few days later as Blessing Matthew, aged 21 and originally from Nigeria. She had just crossed the Franco-Italian border and was last seen alive in the village of La Vachette on the 7th of May. Since 2015, the strengthening of police controls at the Alpine borders has made crossing the mountain dangerous for migrants whose mobility is illegalized. As a result, 46 cases of migrant deaths have been documented at the French-Italian borders since 2015. Blessing was the first recorded case of death in the Hautes-Alpes department. 2 other people have died there since then. Behind each of these cases is a person whose life has come to an abrupt end, and behind each person lie grieving relatives. However, to this day, no actor has been held responsible for these deaths. The practices of control that puts migrants' lives at risk have thus been allowed to continue with impunity. Blessing had arrived on the 6th of May in Clavière, the last Italian village before the border. It is there that she met Hervé S. and Roland E. Around midnight, they set off in the direction of Briançon, walking through the mountains to avoid being intercepted and pushed back at the border. Blessing and her companions then continued their journey by walking on the main road so as not to get lost. Roland's telephone line activated a cell tower located less than 2 kilometers from La Vachette. At around 4 a.m., Blessing, Hervé, and Roland arrived at the entrance to the village from where they could see the church, which they identified as a refuge. It was there that the mobile gendarmerie patrol from Troncy deployed in the area to reinforce the border police for immigration control and maintenance of order, attempted to arrest them.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop it here. So and then we continue, like the entire story where Hervé tell us, at the end how Blessing fell into the river. Can you just give me 2 minutes more? And again, if you want to watch the entire video, it's available online. And I just wanted to, and maybe to make to show you the picture of where Blessing is buried. So it's in Prel. Prel is the small village where the body was found. The body was found 12 kilometers downstream the valley. She was buried there. And as you can see from these 2 images, you can see 2 things. One is how she's put in a corner of the cemetery, so alone. They let her like in isolation, marginalized from the marginalized persons. But on the other side, you can see as well that the grave is. How do you say, visited? I don't know if you can say a visitor grave. Yeah, visited by locals bringing flowers, and she has the name Blessing on the tomb. And she's the old woman there. She's a inhabitant of the village, and she regularly go and bring flowers to Blessing in Blessing's tomb. And another thing, because then we're gonna just make the connection as well to the commemoration when the locals of the valley commemorate of Blessing's death and other deaths in the valley or at the French-Italian border. They normally do not go beyond this one. They take the French-Italian border as their area of responsibility somehow. They do not make commemoration there in this cemetery, but normally here, and you see here there are other names. There are other names of persons who died in this small valley or in the southern border. And here, actually, they are all dead there in the area. This is the bridge in La Vachette where actually Blessing died. So this is the place where locals commemorate Blessing's death and the other persons who died in these recent years in the valley.
Thank you, Cristina. Thank you for all this information. I think your research is really inspiring because in Slovenia we don't have any of this. And I believe that you have a lot of questions, but first I would like to give the words to Marjana and then to Samer. as I already mentioned, Marjana, you are the coordinator of quite important project, international project ERIM. And in the framework of this project, you, together with Serbian, Croatian, and Slovenian researchers, you established multimedia internet platform eRim, and also you are preparing a monograph on keywords on migration. But at the same time, you started researching border deaths in so-called Balkan route. I would like just, if you can explain to us what are key findings of your research.
Thank you, Uršula. Thank you all for coming and listening. First, I would maybe just wanted to underline that the project did not start with the idea that we will work on border deaths. Border deaths were present, and we felt a need and urge to engage in this topic. And if you remember, it was when the project started. It was 2020. It was Corona, and all members of the project are by vocation inclined towards ethnography, and the idea was to keep on with fieldwork without being in touch with people. And in that way, we even more engaged in researching border deaths. We had experience before of working on databases or in some activist collectives regarding border deaths. Our main findings are basically already said by Cristina somehow, and I think the main finding is something that we all know, and that is that border deaths are not the accidents, that they are results of border controls and the people who are in a way pushed into the environments and situations where they die. The second insight would be that we noticed a sharp contrast or discrepancy between, on the one hand, very, very high control, so police, states, agency know everything about migrants, and the other hand, we noticed there is no elementary data on border deaths. From that, this map came out, or our research on collecting data, and data that is the even more data for us coming from the ethnographers sounds strange, I think, but this was the only way how we thought that it is necessary to grasp into the border deaths. So we started to look for information about border deaths and to build up on the already existing database based on media reports. And in that we produce different things. Among them is also this map, which also shows some things that maybe are important to share. And first of all, it is that border deaths are not happening only on border lines, on state borders, but also that state borders produce these deaths. If we had opportunity to zoom into this map, but we don't have, you can do it. You can do it on a project. But it will take time.
Okay. No, okay.
Or to open year by year, you will see how the pathway of people changes, and it can be seen also how deaths change. So Drina will become a deadly river in 2019, or this year Sava also 2022. Border between Bosnia and Croatia will become deadly in 2018 when the people on the move took also that route. So from that map, it is somehow possible to grasp very, unfortunately, vividly how borders that did not exist there 30 years ago are now producing deaths still. This also, beside this work on collecting data and somehow trying to interpret them, we did a work on conceptualization. Yes, thank you. And I think somebody already mentioned that we work on keywords of European regularized migration regime at the periphery of EU. And among our keywords are today keyword border deaths, which is only in Croatian for now available, and also history of border deaths. Yeah, that's it. So here we try to somehow make meaning of the insights and our fieldwork, our ethnography on border deaths. For us, it was important to work also not only in different contexts, so being in Serbia, Croatia, and Slovenia, but also to look into the history, to historize the knowledge about border deaths. Why? Because usually when there is when there is talk about border deaths, it starts in 90s as a year when Fortress Europe was built somehow, but and the focus is mostly on Western Hemisphere. But if we go back to the history, as Cristina mentioned, already in 80s we have first photographs from people who died in Mediterranean, and during our ethnographic fieldwork, we also, you can switch, we came to 1973, unfortunately, to the cemetery close to Trieste, in a village Borș, Sant Antonio in Bosco, where are 4 graves of people who died in 1973. We can talk more about it, but for us was also important to document how this cemetery looks like, and hopefully we will do a more research on how it is perceived today. What does these deaths mean to the local community? But our visit to cemetery in Trieste was part of our systematic visits to cemeteries, and here is the map on which you can see around 13 cemeteries that we visit, and via that also documented unknown border deaths and how the cemetery looks like. Here are some of the photos which I think very sharply tell the difference in these 50 years from 1973 till today, and we can go further maybe from some of the cemeteries, and you see some of them are not marked at all, and the next one is also not marked, and you see how Blessing grave is very, very similar, unfortunately, to the graves. We can speak about multiple marginalization, so people who were marginalized during their lifetime, in that they are buried on margins of the country, usually close to the borderline, and there on the marginal cemetery there are different reasons why so, and then on that cemetery on margins on the cemetery. But as Cristina said, this geolocation of their death is not stopping groups and others to commemorate their death. Maybe this is for now.
Yes, exactly. This marginalization we can see when we go, for example, to Chernobyl or to other places, how marginalized are these graves, and also invisible, as you said. And I believe as a reaction to this marginalization, invisibilization of their deaths, not many, but some researchers, artists, and also activists have launched various counter-memorization or grief activism, as you said in one of your articles. And I would like that maybe you can share some of experiences with this grief activism.
So on our first visits to cemeteries in 2020, no need, I will click after, Selma Banic joined to us and some other colleagues who further on working on border deaths. And in very short time, in only a few months, Selma organized a workshop with the collective Women to Women. Cyril Kateri is here, she's a coordinator of a group. And in the period of pandemic when it was, yes, if you can send, a group of workshop was done in which a practice of counter-commemorization was made. So the textile, no, it's further. I was expecting that it will be on the screen. So it's here. This is a huge textile memorial that became a mobile memorial, shown in different contexts, which tries to commemorize and memorialize losses that are not recognized as worthy of remembering or remembrance by the dominant political framework. But except this textile memorial that some of you could also see it in Ljubljana, there are really various practices of counter-memorialization. I will show them.
It was last year, City of Women.
Yes, yes. This is, for example, you all probably know for Madina Husseini, a 6-year-old girl that that died at the end of the 2017 on Croatian-Serbian border. Since 2018, her death is commemorated at one of the main squares in Zagreb by renaming that square. But this action, which was going year by year, developing in different directions, at this moment is conceptualized, or the state of art is that there is initiative that one of the playgrounds in Zagreb will be named by Madina Hussini. So the work of commemorization tries to somehow inscribe itself in the city, in the public space. Like beside this, there are many digital memorializations, counter-memorialization. This is example of a memorial page by Trans-Balkan Solidarity. And I know that in Ljubljana there were commemorating actions in Ljubljana, but also in Chernobyl and on the places of that. For us as researchers, it was valuable to have a format in which we could share the findings, preliminary findings, with the public, because one of the things that struck us the most was how deaths we are seeing during our work are invisible. So the memorial paid a tribute to people who died, but also made them present and visible. Here on the back side of the brochure that is going around, you can see the names of the people whose death was commemorated. We could talk really a lot about practices and what needs to be done in that field. That is really.
You can also share from the public some of your experiences with that. But I would just like to ask you, Samer, before I will give you the word. You, as a refugee from Syria, you and your companions had experience crossing borders on the so-called Balkan route. Could you explain to us which parts would you point us as particularly dangerous or deadly on the way to Slovenia, and why?
I mean, to be honest, what is visible today is only the talk about the Mediterranean Sea and the Balkan route and the Alps. But to be honest, for many people, the trip is way longer, and it starts somewhere else. And I don't know, some people start already from Afghanistan, some people start from Rwanda, and they have to go through the sub-Saharan route and go through, I don't know, thousands of kilometers before they make it to the Mediterranean. I mean, I have heard the stories and met so many people, and on Lazad camp in France, when we met a lot of activists and colleagues from all over the world, and they talked about the death. And it was fascinating, I mean, for me to know that it's not only us who made it from the Mediterranean to the Balkan. There are so many people who died already trying to exit their countries, and people who died on the route, people who died trying to make it to the shore, and many thousands, if not even hundreds of thousands of people who died already in the sea. I mean, to be honest, it's not an easy topic to address. There are so many different aspects to talk about, but what is interesting, or maybe worth mentioning, is when I made it with the boat and the other fellow guys that were on the boat with us, we were looking around us, there were other boats, and once we made it to the Greek side and we looked behind us, there was none. Some we knew about, some we did not, and once we made it to the camp, the people there were telling us that this is already the second boat that drowned today. In one day that was over 80 people, and this is what we just witnessed and heard about. The rest we never know about, we could never know about, and there are hundreds and thousands of people who died on the way. But I mean, to be honest, and the thing that needs to be pointed out, I think for many people, remains a question: why do people do that? Why to take the risk and go through the water, the sea, and why to expose yourself to such a situation? And I think that's what is worth mentioning, especially talking from an experience. I mean, in so many countries, if we talk about Syria, Palestine, or Rwanda, or Nigeria, or Afghanistan, all of those countries, I mean, people thought days and years about leaving, and there are some circumstances that are way stronger than logic or assessing risk or, just like, we go to Europe. No, there are circumstances that are worse than death on the other side of the world, or behind those hundreds of thousands of stories which we can never hear about or know about. But from an experience, what I can say is that, trust me, taking that decision comes from an experience that is worse than death. I mean, taking the boat or thinking of dying on the road, that's like really not even, that does not cross the top 10,000 of the outcomes that will happen when you think about it. And also, I mean, what I would like to talk about, especially, following what we have mentioned, is, I mean, it's really funny. I think we need a joke here. That white people are again talking about the death of black and brown people. It's a very cliche that white people talk about the less privileged ones. But I mean that makes me wonder why not refugees or migrants or people from this experience are not the ones talking about it, commemorating the death or addressing the death. But I mean, again, it's one thing is the systematic approach the EU and the EU border regime is taking against activism or, let's say, refugee activists or migrant activists that are involved in this field where illegalizing of their status is the outcome once they talk about it. I mean, a few days ago, I heard of this Palestinian guy in Berlin who's being active, talking about migration and situation of migrants, has lost his status, and the German government just decided to take away his status because he's just simply being active. Here in Ljubljana, I mean, I can't say the same, but the state is taking a different approach of making our life miserable once we get active in doing that, and it's not so easy. The means of doing that are not available. The organizational or whatever you name the means are, it's not possible. Other than the topic itself being hard, not each one of us can easily just talk about their experience. But I mean, the whole thing from the macroscope of making our life miserable starts with trying to strip our agency. When the Balkan route started, the closure in the late 2015, beginning of 2016. All the EU member states took the same approach, starting from Austria, Slovenia, closing the border slowly, pushing the problem to the next border, and then organizing camps, making new barriers. I still remember I was one of the groups that got stuck already in Greece, and then you have the whole trip from each country to another, in Albania, in Montenegro, Serbia, Bosnia, and Croatia, and then Slovenia. So each country started closing the border more than the other. New barriers started appearing, and then the pushbacks started happening, and all was in the, let's say, in a way to make the outcome more scary for people, that, hey, look, not one, now many people are dying on the border, so this is a way to scare the others and demotivate them from taking the trip and trying to cross to the next border. I mean, it's interesting because people started trying even more, and death did not really stop us moving around. I mean, I cannot only talk about myself, also the experience of other people who I've met here in Ljubljana or helped them with translation or heard about their stories. And they tried not once or twice, over 50 times. And yeah, I mean, I think that was the ultimate goal, that, you know, the closure of the border and the new measurements that were in place became so harsh to the point that states starting showing the death was a consequence of crossing, I don't know, a snowy mountain or a dangerous river, not that they closed the borders and restricted the movement in a way that there was no other way than taking that road, right? But yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, that was the experience, I guess.
Thank you. Maybe before I give you the word to the public, I would like to ask you, because in Slovenia we have, also with Marjana, we have been in various cemeteries, Črnomelj, Ilirska Bistrica, we will go in the next days. As we know, there are people buried without any, you know, people are buried without knowing their religion, without knowing their names, without respecting the procedures probably they would like to, if they would be alive. So you told me that you know about commemorization of somebody who is buried in Črnomelj, that a group of people, refugees, also went there and make a commemorization of this tomb. So could you explain a bit more? And maybe can you, may I ask you, what do you think that we as society, we should do to make these deaths more visible?
So, I mean, the story about Chernobyl, this happened a few years ago. I think some other people might have better recall of the event, but I think it was a group of activists and friends, and we went together to visit the, I think Katya is looking at me, I think she remembers the story better. Okay. So yeah, we went there and we visited the grave. Some of the guys that were with us know the Islamic rituals of a funeral. They did do the rituals, and yeah, we visited with the mayor of the city, and I think there was also a visit of few EU parliament members and so on, and that was like a way of trying to highlight what was happening. But I mean, for me, to be honest, it's a bit weird to think what is the way to highlight the death rather than, you know, talking about the whole cause of the problem and working on highlighting the issue itself that is causing this death, which is the, you know, more restrictions that are being imposed and normalized by the EU border regime. And making this whole complex story and outsourcing the work of the border to countries like Bosnia and Serbia, where these EU directives and measures are not taken into account, and where all of the, let's say, monkey business under the table could be done and outsourced to countries that can't really be held responsible so easily. Yeah, I mean, I cannot, to be honest, give you an answer on how to make it more visible rather than making the whole cause of it and the consequences that cause the death itself. Yeah.
Now is the time for your questions and comments, so please do ask, do comment. Yeah, it's all.
Can you? I can speak out.
Because it's because of the.
Just because of.
Should I show? My name is Alpah. I'm also a refugee. from Syria, and thank you for the information. I just have a question: if you have any number or statistic from Greece, like, because I think the number is much bigger than the Balkan. So any number or place where we could find or research on this, or any organization online offer some information about this. Thank you.
It's on. I mean, I do not have the number of the Greek fatalities in mind. I think Marjana neither. Actually, maybe but I can tell you where you can. Where you can find at least the minimum that we know. So, and this one, I think we have to. I think we all have to say thanks to one person. And this person is Gert Arts. Is an activist that from 1993. So it's not a fatality neither that my statistics starts in 1993. It's because Gert started in 1993 to document the deaths of the what he calls the Fortress Europe. So he was really alone doing that and starting monitoring all the deaths in Europe or person trying to enter Europe, and it did really this work every year is updating the database, and the database is available. At least you can have the PDF on the organization that is leading. Is called United for Intercultural Change, and you can Action, sorry, United for Intercultural Action, and the website is something like EU Fortress Europe. That's fatality. That's Fortress Europe. You're gonna find it out, and in case we can share with you. And so I can give you the last numbers that he published. So he always publishes the updated table in June, so connected to the Day for Refugees, around the 21st or 20th of June. And the last numbers that we have is 52,000 and something that's in Europe or around Europe or caused by the border regime and European border regime from 93 to 2023. And what we see as well is that it's not, of course, somehow the number is increasing every year because you have 1 year more. But what is quite scaring is that the rate of migrants dying it's bigger. So you have in proportion more every year, more a bigger number. So it's not increasing like regularly, but it's like increasing with a higher number. And you can really have. You can explain it better, maybe. I'm getting a bit tired with English. It's a bit like complicated, but you can have, and Gert is sharing as well the Excel file that he's producing, and you can put the numbers for and try to search for Greece. What he is doing, and probably then I'm gonna give the word to Marjana to complete, is that he started what was available for him, which is newspapers, so news from newspapers at the beginning, and local NGOs, activists that gave him the news and the information. And but bit by bit, actually, what we are. And he's, of course, he's taking care of entire Europe, so he cannot, like alone, like work like a mad. And actually, by the way, in 2 years he will retire. So we are desperate, thinking how to continue his precious work. We are seeing how we're gonna manage, but this is really something that I think we have to do it collectively. I think nobody can do this job for 30 years alone. I would not be able to do that, at least, but I don't know. And what we are seeing as well, that so this is how it does the job, but we are discovering, and probably he knows as well, that there's other ways as well to find out how many persons died, or try to see. It's trying to reconstruct from the symmetries, from the official list that municipalities have, so following not the events of that, but more the bodies. And we realized that actually there are even more deaths if you're gonna go in the cemeteries and you find dead bodies, and we are not in the same list of, you know, the one of the news. So, and all the question is as well, you know, how you gonna document on something where, you know, the state and official agents do not want to research on, and they do not have any interest to do that. They are the perpetrators of the violence and of the deaths, so they are the responsible of this one. So they do not want to investigate, or they do not investigate on that, because, you know, at the end, the responsible is itself, you know, the state. So the question is, again, as well, how you're going to have all this fragmented information when we have it, because, I mean, in land border is a bit more easy than in the middle of the Mediterranean, and where, you know, NGOs are not able to even to try to rescue persons. And for me, I'm quite convinced it's not just the way that you criminalize the NGOs trying to save lives. It's not just trying to stop them to save life. It's as well trying to stop that they document on deaths and on violence. So this is as well the question, you know, how you're gonna, even if you're gonna be in a terrain like the land borders, like the Balkans, like the Alps, where you should be able to know, you know, at least to document how many persons died. We cannot really manage, because it's so difficult to have this information which is invisible, which is fragmented. If the police find a body, they do not give the news to the news agency. The journalists are not taking this news anymore. So how are you going to document this? And for example, for my research, I'm still not sure how many persons die at the French-Italian border in Ventimiglia, so in the southern border, because we do not know, and somehow it's such a easy border. I mean, come on, they're not disappearing in the air, you know, these persons. So that's it. But I'm gonna maybe give you the word for this question, and I can give you the
I don't know what else to add, but just to highlight that when we speak about Greece, and I'm not the expert for the Greece, we speak about rivers, land, so detention centers, squares where all people die, and of course sea. But the only thing that we see on news here, it's only sea. Although Marica or Evros River is the deadliest river probably on the way to these places. And this also tells a lot about us and our capability to understand how very close to Croatia and Slovenia borders are not only on the sea but also on the rivers. We are following some global media reception and representation of border deaths, although very, very close to our places. The place where we sit are rivers who are also used for border control, and in the end, the rivers don't take life, but are used for taking life.
And maybe one thing, if you go through the list of Gert, of the United list, this with 52,000 deaths, you will see. I mean, I think you can be struck by two things. The number of lines without name, first of all, so how many anonymous persons are going to be in that list, and second, how many suicides are in the list. And these occur normally, I mean, more frequently in detention centers or administrative detention center. And this is as well something that we forget, you know, that the border is not just a state border where one state is controlling the entrance of other persons, but the borders are really like for some persons, not me, not Marjana, but we continue having it on the color of our skin when we are stopped by the police and controlled for documents, and the one of the last borders is the one of the detention centers, and the conditions in the detention center are so bad that you're going to have so many accidents or persons killed in the conditions, and or cannot stand the conditions, and then self-harm.
Some other questions or comment?
So sorry that it's such a topic.
Yeah, yeah.
My question is about accountability. Where is the accountability? Because we are now talking about lists of people that left this world, that died. As you said, their deaths are presented as accidents, but they're really not accidents. So I have lately a really big problem with this, especially since the Pilos shipwreck. What's happening with the Pilos shipwreck? Who is there an investigation? Did anybody resign? What is Frontex doing? Is there a special commission set up that is going to investigate this? Is there at the end going to be somebody who will take the responsibility for this and be accountable or not? Sadly, probably not. It will be very abstract, because this is what we like to do. We like to make it abstract. Oh, it's the situation. It is the political climate. It is the way things are. But unless we start talking about real accountability, not some special tribunals, alternative justice, grief activism, art projects that I like very much, this is not enough. So this has been my big problem. Who is responsible for these deaths? Who will be accountable? Where is justice? How are we going to how do we understand the concept of justice in this sphere? And maybe for the little girl from Croatia, that
Medina?
case that was Medina Husini, the case was won, right, at the Court of
Court for Human Rights.
yes, and who was responsible? The state of Croatia.
But no justice is served, I think, with that verdict, because the one thing is what to order to Croatia to make an investigation about, which I didn't hear, so it's definitely not publicly known, and no other behind. Nothing changed with that verdict, so I think this is something that Cristina can comment. Can we expect of courts, our courts today, to serve justice?
Yeah, and I would even say something even worse than that. It's not that nobody is taking accountability, but it's this like the shipwreck that occurred in Lampedusa, the last one. It made even worse, after that, after the shipwreck, where you had so many persons who died, the Italian state used it, instrumentalized this incident, this shipwreck, in order to produce even more dissuasive and horrible and harsh laws. So this is even, it's not only that they are not accountable of what happened, but it's even they're even using that in order to make even things even worse. And for the question who will one day be accountable and responsible for the deaths, I think we are still, I don't know what you think, Amina, what you think, Marjana, maybe other persons in the public as well, but I think we are still in the middle of this, increasing border controls, so increasing violence, so increasing deaths, and so on. So we are within this storm somehow, and as long as we are within, probably nobody won't be able to really make a step back and say what happened and what we did and who was responsible for what. I think it's necessary to have time for that, and you know it. you know it for here what happened not so long time ago. We just, for the Second World War as well, it's like it takes time. It takes time for persons to speak. It even takes time. I think one day some policemen, some border agents, they would probably have a look at what they did, and they probably have a look one day and say you say no, but I don't know. I hope so, because it's I mean, somehow, I can just hope that one day. And the work that we are doing is as well. I don't think it's for today. I think it's for the future. In order to one day, maybe historians will have a look and have a look at that. And there's this. Maybe it's too late, but yeah.
And that's not enough. Definitely, Emina has to comment. Samer, yes.
Okay, Katja, I know you want an answer. So, from my experience in Slovenia, the Slovene state, the Slovene police is accountable and responsible for this death. If we saw a while ago, I think last month, there was this attack on the group of asylum seekers, right? And in Vich, and they called the police. The police came for the Slovenes or whoever backgrounds they were, right? Accounted the asylum seekers that they are responsible for this attack, although they were attacked. They wrote them fines, they complicated their lives, and in short, when you are brown or black, you don't have papers, you don't exist. So that's why nobody will be held accountable, right? When you are an asylum seeker without papers, you don't count. You are non-existent, right? But an attacker who holds a Slovene citizenship, right, gets the support of the police gets on their side, regardless of the story, regardless of what happened, This is a representative story of the whole route, from Greece or before that, even, wherever you live and you don't have papers, whatever happens to you, nobody will legally, right, be accounted for your death. So none of the European laws protect anybody who is already illegalized by that law. So whatever happens to these people, nobody will be held accountable. So anybody could be held accountable for that, and everybody could be, right? But those states made this loophole in the law that as long as you don't have official papers, you are not a subject on which you could anybody could be criminalized or whatever. So, if you want to go a bigger story, all of those colonial forces, they've been fucking the African countries for so long that they made life on that side of the world so miserable to the point that people decided to just leave there and come here, right? Their life became so bad there. I mean, the NATO is everywhere bombing and, destroying and getting involved in those conflicts. So the NATO could be held accountable. I don't know, but that's what I can tell you.
But maybe I can. Could you, Emina Buzikinic, tell us something about? We just heard about tribunal, and I think it's very important to also search for different paths here.
I was provoked by Katja to respond and maybe complementary to what you were saying, Uršula. It's I think if we map out the systems currently, we have under 10 cases in front of the European Court for Human Rights with regard to violation of migrants' rights in the region. Under 10 cases, and those 10 were prepared for years by activists, NGOs, lawyers. And external experts that are not coming from the Balkans necessarily. So we have European Court for Human Rights. We have very few cases before the domestic courts in these countries. And these are and those that we have are administrative violations. They're not usually, they are of course violations of human rights and freedoms, which are usually turned down. That's why the lawyers jump into or go into the proceedings before the European Court for Human Rights. As Marjana said, European Court for Human Rights gives recommendations and sort of finds or extends their recommendation to presenting a fine to a certain country or a damage compensation. Recently, we had a case of Abdul Daraibu, who spent a lot of time in Slovenia and Croatia, about 4 years in detention, and multiple forms of torture and denial of asylum, humanitarian stay, both in Slovenia and Croatia, and then eventually deported from Croatia to Morocco. European Court for Human Rights trial lasted for 4 years. Finally, it was proven that the Republic of Croatia was guilty, no governmental follow-up, and Abdul got 10,000 euros, whereas his losses were much bigger, and he lost 2 co-travelers from his own village that burned to death in the cell where they were imprisoned, 3 of them. So the damage compensation doesn't equal the suffering, right? But let's say that we have 4 altogether rulings for the European Court for Human Rights. That's when we map out the judicial system. If we map on the other side what international human rights judiciary is offering to us, we have two directions. One is the United Nations, which is completely impotent and doesn't react. Another one is International Criminal Court. International Criminal Court runs cases for 14 or 15 years with only 2 cases solved in the last 20 years. So administrative impotency to slowness and so on. So talking about accountability, we need to know that we are operating within a system that is not going to trial itself, right? The system doesn't want to be on a trial because the system is designed to push back people of color out of the borders of, away from the borders of Europe. And the very few people of color that live here very much serve the idea of maintaining, this liberal, multicultural nationalism and the cosmetic, diversity that we are kind of showing off with here. So we don't have very many options than to look for alternative forms of justice. And then ERIM and grief activism and potential tribunal that we are currently preparing might offer some forms of justice. And that justice is not the traditional justice. It doesn't come from the power systems, but it comes from the power of people's organizing and societies coming to terms with what is happening in their name. And so, for instance, the tribunal, People's Tribunal that we are currently envisioning, which is in a sense weaving this event into, at this current moment, is envisioning another form of justice, epistemic, transformative, poetic, what kind of justice people might seek. And, maybe Samer or other people that have gone through the, through the Balkan route, Mediterranean route, and other routes to get here, might come there as witnesses, survivors, witnesses of time, to talk about those experiences. And if they are heard differently than what dominant narrative is imposing every day, that might be an opportunity for us to think about justice in ways that's being, knit and woven together with people. People's justice formed under people's, with people's views, with people's experiences, and not, sort of detached from that. For instance, we have a fisherman in Bosnia who wants to speak about dead bodies that he's taking out of the rivers where he's working, and no judiciary is going to recognize him as a witness. I mean, people didn't in France. Judiciary in France didn't recognize, what is his name again? Hervé's testimony. They found it irrelevant for the case of Blessing Matthew. So we have to counteract, and that is the way we can think about accountability and justice. But I just want to say one more thing. The culture of impunity exists in Europe when it comes to migration, at least from the 70s, with the whole building of Fortress Europe. It merges with the culture of impunity in our space with the war crimes that happened in the 90s. And so that culture is so strong. We don't have other choice than counter it through alternative forms.
Yeah, I'm just afraid that these alternative I'm just afraid that these alternative forms of justice, which I find important and commendable and like something that is important to do, it is worthwhile to do this, to build other structures. I'm just afraid that this is again just another mechanism that will not bring those people that are really accountable to any type of accountability. This is what, you know, and then I'm thinking, as you said, on the national level, where are the court cases on the national level? Where are they? Why is this not happening? And it's not the critique of the migrants, it is critique of us, of activists, you know? So this is my concern with these tribunals.
Yeah.
That's all.
Sorry. Thank you. There is another question from the public.
I just had a short comment. I think that it's dangerous also to put statements as you did that no migrant with not legalized status will receive any assistance if being victim of criminal act, because this is still not true. There are certain protection measures for victims of trafficking, for victims of domestic violence, at least for Slovenia, for example. We have, yes, there is Article 50 in the Aliens Act, and we do use it very often. So they can get their status and different forms of assistance. So if we just like speaking this way, that there is no solution for no one, then we cannot offer them support. And that's, you know, it's counterproductive. Because we try to tell persons who are seeking asylum that they can seek help and they will get it, at least here in Slovenia.
Maybe I can I comment? I know it's a question to Samer, but I have this something that I need to share. So on paper, things look okay when we speak about border, that there are procedures that can be done. There is cooperation between polices and between different agencies on one ground. But what we see in the field is the things that are easily accessible to those who are citizens or coming from Europe is almost inaccessible to people coming from other parts of the Europe of the world. Only some identification at the end depends on the how can relative come to the country. Does he or she have enough time to stay here, to try to start procedures which are like mandatory by on different levels. So I think the legislation courts are maybe not the only frameworks in which we need to think for searching for justice, and then certainly cannot be taken for granted, because in practice it really does not work. So, if you want to answer,
yeah. I mean, I understand that you are implying that there is some sort of power to the written legislation, but I can assure you that not me, I don't want to speak about my experience, but Slovene colleagues that are in the audience sitting around you can confirm how many times this such situation happened. You know, it happened many times to the extent that, you know, we got the belief that the law does not protect people who do not have papers. Their testimonies are not taken seriously. When they report, they get punished. They don't get protected. The amount of times this incident happened got us to the belief that this is the case today. Yeah.
Maybe just give an example which is not exact, but you know, it's a bit linked to your question and to what Marjana said on, you know, what are the rights and the law in place on paper, written black and white, and what actually happens on the terrain and the reality. So Blessing died in May, as I said. Her name is Blessing Matthew but it's the name that she chose to have when she reached Italy. So her name officially it's not Blessing Matthew. And why I'm telling you that, and why it's important to tell you that, is that she does not have the same name than her sister, Cristiana Obie, and not Cristiana Matthew, right? And Cristiana is in Italy, living in Italy, and living without documents. And it was needed at one point that somebody recognized the body of Blessing. And the local association organized a trip for her. So she lives in southern Italy. She came by bus. The trip took like 18 hours or something like that to come up to the mountain. And she was refueled by the police because the police said, you do not have the same name, you cannot be the sister. So I'm sorry, but you have to go back. So she was refueled by the police, went back to Bari, and after a week she could finally redo the journey and come again. And she entered the territory. She could finally recognize the sister. But this is, this is like, this is how you can see how, how, I don't know, how brutal is the law in front of a, because actually, and when she came back, so they had the funeral. Somebody did the funeral and she was buried, and then Cristiana went back, and when she stopped at the border, she wanted to go to toilets. She went to the in the border police how do you say, checkpoint, and one of the policemen said, if you do not say anything and if you stop here fighting for the truth for your sister, we're gonna give you documents and you can stay in France, And she just said, like, I mean, come on, I do not want to stay in France. I'm in Italy. I'm living in Italy. I'm working in Italy. I do not want to stay here, But this is, how probably, don't know, the way the story and the story that Cristiana told us, it's the way, you have this discrepancy between maybe what is the right that you have and what is the difference and on the access to rights, and if you do not have papers, I mean you live in constant fear that you can be deported at one point, so you do not trust any authorities. So if you do not trust any authorities, you do not trust even the ones that could maybe support you. And maybe they do not even do, but they do not. So there's really a discrepancy between rights and the access of rights. And speaking about domestic violence, we know exactly, as women, that we should have the right to be protected in case of being victims of domestic violence, and actually we are not. So there's almost no cases where the violence is persecuted.
Thank you. I think we can stop here. Thank you for all your questions and comments, and especially thank you, Cristina, Marjana, and Samer, for sharing all these important experiences and information. And I really hope that we will continue talking about this topic. I know it's hard, it's difficult, but we need to. We need to talk. We need to research, discuss, and fight. We cannot leave these deaths to be invisible. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So then I'm gonna just finish with this one. So this is the address of the. It's unitedagainstrefugeedeaths.eu.
Definitely. Thanks
for coming.